is good wood, usable wood. You're emotionally attached, and I get it. So many memories around this table. So many games were played. So many tears were shed. Oh my gosh. Anywho, very excited to have my hands on this. I'm gonna take the old, do some magic. Hard to believe this was Grandma's table. I love it. Turned out great. So one of my favorite things to do is upcycle. And the first part of that is taking apart the piece and figuring out how much usable board feet of lumber we have. Thankfully, there was a lot of solid wood on this. Unfortunately, you might run across some particle board with a really thin veneer on it, and it's just not usable in an upcycle. So I love the old joinery, how they used to put things together. There's a lot of the same ways we do today. So it was fun to pull apart all the hardware. I'm probably going to reuse it on a project, repurpose it into something. But we figured out that we had quite a bit of usable wood. So to figure out usable board feet, we take the length times the width times the thickness in inches, and then divide it by 144, and that tells you how much usable board feet. So here I am ripping down the tabletop, and we're making some 3-inch veneer. I'm trying to use as many of the pieces as possible. Again, just 3-inch strips, and then we'll take it over to the bandsaw and resaw it and make our 1/4-inch veneer. So this was all pine, some poplar, and here I am at the bandsaw just cutting it in half, and then I'll take it over to the planer and we'll plane it nice and smooth down to a 1/4-inch. And I had some thicker pieces I milled down, and here I'm just making the framework for the coffee table. This is going to be the top, and then I'm going to work on the sides, and we have an X pattern on the sides. Already completed the toy chest, so I know I've got just enough usable wood. I'll have to make the shelf and the top. I'll use a 3/4-inch plywood core, and then I'll use my 1/4-inch veneer over top of that. Just did some simple Craig joinery, just putting the sides together and making sure everything's nice and square. And to make everything nice and square, I used my Rockler square jig insert and just lined those up, and I clamped down the piece because I don't like when the Craig screw raises the board, so I try to clamp it nice and tight so everything is smooth and even. And then just move the squares around the piece, making sure every corner is square. So here I am making the X on the side of the coffee table. Simplest way to do it is to cut your piece to length that'll fit inside the parameter of your X. And then I just lay my frame over it and trace out the lines, and then take it over to my miter saw and cut those angles. Easy peasy. So you're letting the piece do all the work for you. So to get my cross pieces, I've got my main piece of the X, and then I just laid my other cross piece over top of that to make my lines to know exactly where to cut. So there's my main piece. See how it fits in there? And I'll put my side pieces in. Sand, sand, sand. Sanding. Just some glue and some brads to get the X tacked in. A little finicky. You gotta get it just right if you're a perfectionist. All right. About done with that X there, big guy. Beautiful. I love how that turned out. And then just did the same thing on the other end. So there we have our two sides with the X. Now I'm going to just flip it on its side, add the supports, and here I'm taking the plywood core for my shelf and my top and just making sure it fits exactly. And then I'll go ahead and put the 1/4-inch veneer. I just do a light sanding on the plywood, get any of the rough stuff off, and then lay out my pattern. And a little bit of glue and some 1/2-inch brads. Do 3/4-inch brads. It's going to have a rustic feel, so I'm not going to worry too much about brad holes, but we will fill them before we stain. And if you go a little bit long on the ends, that's fine because your plywood core is cut exactly
to width and size because I tested it. So I can just take my trim router and go around the outside and fix any overhang or any unevenness with the veneer. And there it is. Man, love how that turned out. Pine is just beautiful. Who knew this was grandma's table? And then comes the fun part, picking a stain. I like to give at least 3 examples of stain. Helps me narrow down what the client's looking for exactly, and this is what we landed on, and I think it was a beautiful complement to the piece. So when you sand these pieces, make sure you get all the glue, because glue does not stain. And one thing, I do a lot of sanding. It's important to switch hands, because you could, if you do the amount of sanding that I do, you could actually cause nerve damage from all the vibration. So make sure you switch from left to right. Special walnut, there it is. And we even took one of the maker marks from the original table.
What's fun, this isn't the first time I've done something like this. So this is actually the mother-in-law, sorry. So I did a table and this is the mother of the people, no. I'll get it all confused. Anyway, this is 2nd generation table. So I did one for their daughter and son, daughter-in-law and son. This is 2nd generation table. I did one for their daughter-in-law and son from her, the daughter-in-law's table, and now the parents of the husband. Who cares? Good night. This is not my first table.
Hey, if you like this video and want to see more like it, just go ahead and subscribe. If you want to see how I put this toy chest together, check out this video. All right, see you next time. Hope it helps.